Actually, I am going to do another program here. This will be the 7th today, or the 26th in the series, I believe. I don't want to leave you hanging on this. This will be a reasonably brief one. And I'll just check the time here. I've got 20 minutes for this presentation. So, I'm going to make it a good 20 minutes. Now, Andrew Jackson would popularize the ideas of the French Revolution, and so it's therefore important to understand the seeds that were planted in the middle 18th century, that is the 1700s, that would later flower in this country, later flower on, and then in the next presentation we'll talk specifically about the break from England in this country, the Catholic accommodation to that break, dissenting voices that were heard both prior to and during the war, the American Revolution or War for Independence, and then the life of the Church after the war. I will go into specific detail on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, certain provisions of the Constitution. I won't do it in as much detail as I will be doing in the American government course that I'll do at some point when I get through with this particular series. But all of these ideas matter. We must know our history. We must know that things don't simply occur, that things haven't always been great in this country, that our problems didn't start in the 1950s or the Vatican II. There were antecedent modern eras that led to all of the problems we're facing today. Centuries in the making, going back to the Renaissance. And I want to know who the ultimate disturber of peace is, it's you and me. Our sins. Especially when we hear that this is true and we don't act upon it. Or when we reject it. Because we think it can't be, so nobody else speaks this way. How can it be true? I never heard this before. What can I tell you? As I said before, am I doing this for riches? For riches? Come on. For money? For popularity? For status? Father Veilly again gave an excellent description of the philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. How his belief in the primacy of the individual, but a primacy of the individual that would lead to the subordination of the individual to the collective general will. A step beyond the majoritarianism of luck, that we're all at the mercy of some passing majority. A step beyond that to the fact that we can sense the general will somehow and act upon that general will to which all must subordinate themselves. Rousseau, who lived in the 18th century, the 1700s, according to others, Father Veilly, Jean-Jacques Rousseau carries on the revolution against the order of the world begun by Luther. Luther's revolt was that of our individuality and sense life against the exigencies of the supernatural order instituted by God. It was an attempt to remain attached to Christ while rejecting the order established by Christ for our return to God. Rousseau's revolt was against the order of natural morality by the exaltation of the primacy of our sense life. So Rousseau went beyond the Protestants. It went beyond even the Masons, who were relativists morally, but who believed they could define their own morality, to Rousseau, who said we must emphasize the sense life. We would know what we know by senses. In his philosophy of education, the children must experience life. He was against formal learning in books as what would be called uneducation or unschooling today. Let the child learn what he wants. No, there must be structure. I am a Thomist. Not only my name is Thomas, I'm a Thomist. There must be structure, order, discipline. We call it in our family structure, order, disappointment, discouragement. Where did you put this? I don't know where you do. Where did you put that? I put that. I didn't put that. Who? All human nature. See what my wife has to put up with, my daughter. We get along so well because we're very similar in many ways. Structure, order, disappointment. But any structure to learning. Students sit, they listen, they take excellent notes. They review their notes regularly. They read, they underline their reading. They think, they study, they're prepared, and they make it part of themselves. The purpose of reading and taking a course is so that it will remain part of you. Good schooling. You want to forget garbage, but I'll tell you, so many students I taught over the years, I had a lot of great students, a lot of them though, they just wanted to get through. They wanted to get their 3 credits. And it didn't really matter to them what they got. And you would hear after the final exam was over, the thud of notebooks in trash cans outside. They were done. They didn't want any more part of it. And, but structure, order, and students years ago were taught this even in New York City high schools. They were taught, public schools. They were taught even on the natural level. How to read, how to think, how to grammar, how to write, how to calculate in their own mind without devices. They could get good jobs out of high school. Now, oh no, it's outcome-based education. What do you feel? Now 2 + 2 is 9? Well, that's a creative. How did you arrive at the answer? Do you feel good about this answer? Could you imagine outcome-based medical education? Well, yeah, the patient died, but do you feel good about the outcome? Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? Rousseau, the sense life, the self. He was the ultimate narcissist. He once said that there was never anything so wonderful that he'd ever contemplated than his own visage in a mirror. The primacy, his war was against the order of natural morality by the exaltation of the primacy of our sense life. The little world of each of us, as Father Fahey, our individuality is a divine person, supremely free and sovereignly independent of all order, natural and supernatural. The state of liberty, or of sovereign independence, is the primitive state of man, and the nature of man demands the restoration of the state of liberty, under which you become a slave. It is to satisfy this so-called exigency that the father of modern thought invented the famous myth of the social contract, which Locke had discussed before. The social contract gives birth to a form of association in which each one, while forming a union with all the others, obeys only himself and remains as free as before. Each one is subject to the whole, but he is not subject to any man. Therefore, because there is no man above him. He is absorbed in the common ego begotten in the pact, so obeying the law, he obeys only to himself. Each citizen, now understand this, each citizen votes in order that by the addition of the number of votes, the general will expressed by the vote of the majority is to say a manifestation of the deity immanent in the multitude. I want to repeat that for those of you who don't understand the qualifications, the very specific qualifications that Pope Pius XII put on the obligation to vote. We've got to read words and apply them to concrete circumstances and understand the circumstances in which we live today. And no, the country isn't with us. The country has changed as a result of these falsehoods, which aren't going away at the ballot box. Each citizen votes, according to Rousseau, in order that by the addition of the number of votes, the general will expressed by the vote of the majority is, so to say, a manifestation of the deity immanent in the multitude. In other words, we're God. Voice of the people, ex vox Dei. This is what Andrew Jackson believed. The voice of the majority. The majority wants slavery, there shall be slavery. Chattel slavery. The owning of human beings. Vox populi is vox Dei. That's different from the slavery that in Rome, in Greece. Now there's some cruelty, a lot of cruelty there. But the chattel slavery of modernity, of the modern era, Sanctioned by the majority. If the majority believes something right, is therefore it's right. What if the majority had voted to endorse Hitler? The majority did vote in 1934 to endorse his slaughter of those generals who did not go along with, who would not join the Nazi Party. But I think some number of generals were killed or executed. There was a plebiscite taken. The majority agreed with that. Does majority will equal moral right? For those of you who believe in abortion on demand, abortion under any circumstances, bar none, or contraception, pornography, perversity, under cover of the civil law, special rights. Does majority will equal moral right? No. Because who are you to say some other country is wrong? Where is your standard? Relativists are trapped by their own relativism. The people, therefore, are God by the voice of the people is the voice of God. Father Fahey went on to say, the people are God. No wonder we have gotten used to writing the word with a capital letter. The pilgrim people of God, Paul the Sixth. The law imposed by this deity does not need to be just in order to exact obedience. Do you see these errors? The law imposed by this deity, meaning the people, the majority could be on the court, could be in Congress, Obamacare. Doesn't make any difference. It was passed unconstitutionally, ratified by the Supreme Court. A George W. Bush appointee, by the way. Does not need to be just in order to exact obedience. In fact, the majority vote makes or creates right and justice. An adverse majority vote can not only overthrow the directions and commands of the heads of the mystical body on earth, the Pope and the bishops, but can even deprive the Ten Commandments of all binding force. That is, the people can strip the Ten Commandments of all binding force. Look at what happened in Maryland, in Washington and Colorado, marijuana. Maryland voting to endorse so-called gay marriage, which has been legalized in other states because of votes of judges or legislatures. Abortion, contraception. Think, folks, think. It's all opposed to the faith. Once you admit that people are God, the people of this voting business is a way to pursue progress, you're cooked. Because in a land where Christ is not king, who are you to say, you and the minority to say the majority's wrong? Sure, the founding fathers, a lot of them believed that that those in the minority had the right to express their views, but ultimately the majority would prevail. And in a system of error, based upon one error after another, in a sea of error, people are going to be so deceived as to be unable to recognize the truth, and so steeped in their own sins. Their intellects will be so darkened, their wills so attached to sin, that even if they come to see what is right, they don't want to give up the wrong that they do. Father Fahey went on to say, the triumph of those ideals in the modern world, the Masonic denial of original sin, and the Rousseauist dogma of the natural goodness of man have contributed not a little, and even to conciliarism, obviously. The dogma of natural goodness signifies that man lived originally in a purely natural paradise of happiness and goodness, very similar to John Locke. We do not need grace, for nature can do what grace does. In addition, Rousseau holds that this state of happiness and goodness, of perfect justice and innocence, of exemption from servile work and suffering, is natural to man, that is essentially demanded by our nature. Not only, then, is original sin non-existent, not only do we not come into the world as fallen sons of the first Adam, bearing in us the wounds of our fallen nature, is radically anti-natural. Suffering and pain have therefore been introduced by society, civilization, and private property. Hence we must get rid of all of these and set up a new form of society. We can bring back the state of the Garden of Eden by the efforts of our own nature without the help of grace. For Rousseau, the introduction of the present form of society and of private property constitute the real fall. The real fall was the institution of the church, of Christendom, the setting up of a republic based on his principles, as well as of a sort of democratic grace, which will restore in its entirety our lost heritage. He believes that his democratic republic will set up and restore what was lost. And what was lost by the imposition of Christendom upon society, upon the world. And therefore, as a consequence of all of this, Rousseau's appeal acts like an urge of homesickness. We need not be astonished then, apart from the question of Masonic revolutionary organization and propaganda, at the sort of delirious enthusiasm which takes possession of men at the thought of a renewal of society. Nor need we wonder that men work for the overthrow of existing government and existing order in the belief that they are not legitimate forms of society. A state not constructed according to Rousseauist Masonic principles is not a state ruled by laws. It is a monstrous tyranny. A state constructed according to Rousseauist Masonic principles is not a state ruled by laws. It is a monstrous tyranny and must be overthrown in the name of progress and of onward march of democracy. The Sion, the same thing. These are the principles of the French Revolution. These are the principles exalted by Andrew Jackson and so many other apologists from 1824 on, and they had their apologists with Thomas Jefferson early on as well. All these influences must be borne in mind as we behold since 1789 the triumph in one country after another of Rousseauist Masonic democracy. It is no wonder the world keeps degenerating. And this is the world, these are the principles with which Joseph Ratzinger Benedict XVI has made his reconciliation. All of the conciliar documents, man, 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 the rights of man, the dignity of man, universal rights of man, the Declaration of Independence. No, we need a Declaration of Dependence upon Christ the King and his Catholic Church, my friends. All of these ideas, these naturalistic ideas, Masonry, which we'll talk more about in the American context in the next presentation, shape the event in which we find ourselves today. Now, we need not be despondent. This is the time from all eternity God is known, you and I would be alive. This is the time he means just to sanctify and save our immortal souls as members of his true church in the catacombs, with our shepherds who make no concessions to the non-existent legitimacy of the conciliar revolutionaries or their false doctrines, and their sacramentally barren and indeed abominable, egregious liturgies, so-called liturgical rites, fruitless sacramental rites. We must adhere to the truths of the Catholic faith, taking heart that Our Lady wants us to persevere in this time of apostasy, this time of error, this time of confusion, that there is work for us to do. Let us therefore do this work with joy, understanding that we have been placed here in the United States to plant the seeds, to save our souls, to help others to save their souls, to plant the seeds for the conversion of the country, if it is God's will for it to occur, but to do so without looking for results. Because there will be, in the end, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the restoration of the social reign of Christ the King. Viva Cristo Rey, viva la Virgen de Guadalupe. Keep close to our Lord in his real presence in the Blessed Sacrament and the true Mass. Go to confession, pray your rosaries, keep close to St. Joseph, St. Michael the Archangel, St. Gabriel, St. Raphael, your guardian angels. Pray your travel prayers, pray to St. Christopher. See you in the next presentation. God bless. Viva Cristo Rey.